Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about our mathematics STRAND project. Tristan and I decided to do a 4th grade math class. In this project, Tristan and I will be teaching a 4th grade classroom on the topic of mathematics. Within mathematics, we'll be focusing on SOL 4.4 Section A, which talks about demonstrating fluency with multiplication facts through 12 times 12 and the corresponding division facts. Before we go into our lesson plan, we just wanted to talk over a little bit of how we would unpack the standard. Within unpacking the standard, you want to ask yourself, what do students need to do? So the students will have to demonstrate fluency by completing multiplication and division problems that will go through 12 times 12. The next thing that you will have to ask yourself is, what do students need to know? The students will need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide already to be able to complete the concepts. Our objective for this lesson is we are going to be giving students 5 different playing cards from a deck of cards, and each student will have to compete against other students by recalling multiplication problems previously learned and throughout the lesson. The next thing we did was we created a concept map, which in the middle we put our SOL, which is 4.4. All 6 of those points go into depth of what exactly we will be doing throughout our lesson, but we chose to do it on a concept map to see it planned out visually. The next thing that we incorporated into our lesson is a note-taking device. This template was created on Canvas. Students will be able to have this template while we do our instruction model, and they will fill out at the top the SOL with the point A and what exactly we're doing. And then below that, they will be able to make notes on the worksheets, and some of those notes include different multiplication and division problems that they are learning, some tips that we give them. The purpose of this notes worksheet is to help the students stay on track and be able to go back and look at it as they are doing their guided practice. They will not be able to use this note sheet on their assessment, but it will still be helpful when they do their guided practices, homework, and studying for future assessments. For the next part of our project, we chose 3 pieces of literature that we are going to read to the students. One book is going to be read within the lesson, and the other 2 books will be incorporated in different parts of the lesson as we go on in the future. The first piece of literature that we included in our lesson is called The Grapes of Math. So we decided to choose this book because it had great imagery that the students could look at, and is a very interactive book. The book basically covers multiplication and teaches students how to count in groups, and shows them very specifically how to do that on the pages. Also, this book is told through riddles, imagery, and coloring that allows students to interact with each page while having fun with their classmates. The reading level for this book is typically 3rd to 5th grade, and the Lexile is 750. The second piece of literature that we chose was Multiplying Menace: The Revenge of Rumpelstiltskin. This book is a very silly book that we just chose because we thought the students would love it, but it's also, again, very interactive. In the book, the character Rumpelstiltskin is getting revenge on the village, and in the village, he starts scaring the townspeople by making everything increase in numbers by multiplying objects. So when we're reading this book to students, they can almost comprehend that multiplication means a number getting bigger, because in the book, every time he does a magic trick on something, like the sheep or different animals included in this book multiply, or there's more amounts of them. So that just shows the students that multiplication means bigger. And then when there's less objects, or objects are getting smaller, like say there's 10 sheep and then all of a sudden there's 2 sheep, students can kind of comprehend that with, okay, that's division because things are getting smaller. The third piece of literature that we chose was Amanda Bean's Amazing Dream. And this book, the author puts an important emphasis on multiplication and the why behind it. In this story, she uses different animals to display the numbers being multiplied, kind of similar to Rumpelstiltskin, but a different storyline. For sake of time, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit in our lesson plan and just kind of explain what the lesson will look like. So when Tristan and I first start the lesson, we will just start introducing the SOL to the students and have them around the carpet. One of us will start to read the Grapes of Math to them and have a very interactive lesson and just make sure they're participating and understand the concept of multiplication. At this part 2, students will have their note sheets, so they will be able to write down different notes that we tell them to write, or different facts or problems they see while reading the book. The guided practice will work as a game, so we will split students, depending on the size, up into a couple groups, and there'll be 5 students in each group, so we'll probably have 4 groups of 5. Each student will receive 5 different playing cards. On these playing cards, they'll either get a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. They will compete against one of their classmates. So the purpose of this game is the teacher, Tristan and I, one of us will count down from 3, and then as soon as we say go, the student will flip their card, and that will be the multiplication problem. So if one student has a 7 and one student has a 3, the goal is to do 7 times 3, and the student who guesses that number first wins that round and then moves on to another round. Moving into our independent practice, this will be their assessment, which will basically have everything that they learned from the book, from just taking notes, and from problems they use during their interactive game. And they will have 20 questions on their assessment, which will be 15 will be multiplication problems and 5 of them will be division problems. And then we'll close the lesson by just refreshing their minds again on what they learned and asking them what they thought of today's lesson. And then if we have extra time, they will be able to continue playing the multiplication game.
All right, so now we're going to our integrated activity. So our Virginia Standard of Learning is 4.4. The student will investigate and understand weather conditions and phenomena and how they affect ecosystems and how they can be predicted. So key ideas include weather measurements to create a record that can be used to make weather predictions. So for our science integrated activity, that is basically what we're going to be doing. We're going to be taking the temperature 3 times a day throughout 1 week. We'll do it in the morning, during lunchtime, and right before they leave. And students will basically be finding the average temperature of each time of the day, the average overall temperature, how many measurements they took, and make a prediction of the next day's temperature. And during that, they'll be using addition, division, and then multiplication as well. Students will be provided a thermometer, a chart to write down their results, and writing utensils, and they will not be allowed to use a calculator for their results. So for the social science activity, we use the Standard of Learning Virginia Studies HC, which is describing the importance of railroads, industries, and the growth of cities in Virginia's economic development. So for this activity, students will create a map, and then on this map, they will have the major railroads during the Civil War and post-war era. And connecting math to this, we are going to have, after they basically draw out the railroads, they're going to have to write the distances. And I will provide word problems where they have to use the word problems to come up with the answers to how long each railroad is. So, for example, construction workers could build an average of 10 feet of railroad per day. How many feet of railroad could the construction workers complete after 7 days? So I have to answer that using multiplication, and that's kind of how we put that in. And they will not be allowed to use a calculator for that as well. All right, so then for our tiered activities, I use the Virginia Standard of Learning 4.4. Student will create and solve single and multi-step problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and single-step problems involving division with whole numbers. So for this activity, we will be using base 10 blocks to work on those 4 math processes. For below grade level, we will focus on interpreting and explaining given problems given base 10 blocks. So instead of students creating their own word problems, we're going to have the teacher basically give them word problems and work with them as a group. They'll keep it single step so students can understand it easier. this teacher will make an effort to repeat instructions multiple times, encourage, and do any other special modifications or accommodations to help the students who are struggling. So for the on-grade level students, they will work on creating their own word problems using base 10 blocks. So basically, for example, a student could have the question, okay, 15 divided by 3. Okay, we need to have 15 and divide it into 3 different groups, and they will physically do that with the base 10 blocks. And this will be done for the below and on grade level and above grade level. They will be using that hands-on activity of physically separating those out, and they will get the answer of 5. And then after modeling a couple that the teacher gives them, students will create their own word problems and then have their classmates solve them. By the end of this station, students should have completed at least one of each of the 4 mathematical processes: addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication, and then solved one random process that was given to them by a peer, that was created by one of their peers. So then for the above grade level, so students will work on creating their single step and multi-step problems using base 10 blocks. So with above grade level, we're going to add in multi-step and work towards that. Just add a little bit of challenge for the students who are above grade level and are getting it pretty quickly. So the teacher will model one single step problem first, and then have the students create a couple word problems on their own to share with their peers. And then after they've done that for a little while, boost it up to a multi-step problem. For example, where students create 5 sets of 4, which makes 20 blocks, and then they also have to add 10 more blocks. And in that, I would make sure to remember to tell them, okay, order of operations, we do multiplication before addition, and just keep that in mind. For assessments, the formative assessment, students will have a mini whiteboard activity where the teacher will write a problem up on the board and students will have to answer it and hold it up. So pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. We'll do that for about 5 to 7 minutes, and the teacher will be able to see which students got the information and which did not. The second formative assessment will be an exit ticket that will be given at the end of class. It'll be about 10 questions, and it will just go over multiplication problems, and that'll be turned in at the end. And then for our summative assessments, we're going to have the students create a project where they make their own game to study math problems. So the example that I used in this would be create a bingo sheet where the answer, like all the answers on the bingo sheet are answers like 20, 25, 60. And then the teacher will say, hey, the question is 5 times 5. And if they see the answer is 25 on their board, they scratch it out. And then there can be some prizes for the winner. But we'll have the students create projects like that. And that'll allow them just to kind of be in charge of their own learning a little bit and just have some fun with it. And then for references, we use the National Math Foundation. I got one there's multiplication bingo cards that I found online. And then, of course, the Virginia Department of Education.